Hi everyone. My name is Iris. I am like Tabby said, I am an animator at Rebellion. Today I'll be talking about choosing your subclass as an animator in the games industry specifically. But I'm sure that even if you are not like aiming specifically at games, but like thinking maybe more even film or something, there's still gonna be lessons in this presentation that will be applicable to you. So let's just get on with it. As like I said, the title is choosing your subclass as an animator in the games industry. But first, let's discuss why this is relevant. So essentially, the reason why I came up with this subject in the first place is because the first thing I did after I realized I was going to be giving this talk is I had a quick chat with HR and talent acquisition team at my company. And I essentially just wanted to let them know that I'll be presenting. And, is there anything that they would like me to bring up? Is there any advice that they would like me to share on their behalf? And I got some pretty interesting notes, and one of them particular sparked my interest for this talk. But let's go over some general stuff first. So the stuff that they told me that I should bring up. First of all, if you're applying to Rebellion specifically, keep an eye on the careers page, and this is a bit more in general. Where whenever possible, sign up to get job alerts, to get notified just when like roles go live. And now more specifically for animation, the reel is the most important part of your application. I'm sure you already heard that. That means that you always have to make sure your reel contains your best work at the moment. Don't keep something on there that's like 5 years old and does not longer reflect your capabilities as an animator. Um, it's way more important to have something that's really accurate and paints you in the best light than to have a long reel that honestly that just even like maybe tires out the people who are having to go through every application. If it's really long and repetitive, it's better to keep it short but relevant. And we'll get back to that word relevant, but one more note I wanted to bring up because I've heard my leads complain about it before. It's essentially when you're handing in your reel, make sure that you give access. Make sure that it's not like something that's password protected, and then your interviewers or whoever is reviewing cannot actually open it because there is a chance, because they're so busy, that they just no one's gonna try to catch you and be like, hey, your link doesn't work. So yeah, just double check that everything is openable. And then the last one, make sure the reel is relevant. Like I said, we get back to that, to the type of work you want to get into. Okay, and that bit is what actually motivated me to, of all the subjects out there, choose this one. This one is the most important. Let's talk about it. So, essentially, your reel is supposed to convince a company that you're the perfect fit for the kind of games that they are making. What this means is that, and I really like RPGs, so I'm gonna be using an RPG analogy here. So imagine that like you are forming a party of adventurers for your game, and as a player, right? And you're going to be thinking tactically about it. You're going to be not just choosing anyone. You're going to try to, choose based on the those companions' skills, what you need. You're gonna maybe try to merge like, I need a mage or a healer in this party for this specific encounter. This is kind of also how the people who will be hiring you think. They're also thinking about what project like they're gonna put you on, what kind of games that you'll be making. And you can be, it's not just important that you're a good animator, it's important that you're a good fit for the specific projects that they have in mind for you. So, if we take a look, this is like Rebellion's page. It's like the most relevant games that they have going on right now. And so, if in case you're curious, I worked on, for instance, Sniper Elite 5, which is in the bottom right. I worked as a cutscene animator. Now I'm working as a gameplay animator on Atomfall. I'll show the trailer later because it's relevant, like in terms of like what kind of style do we have going on and that kind of stuff, and how my skills fit into that specific kind of like art style. But just looking at them, you can see that the studio has a certain type of games that they make. There's not a lot of. We have an exception with like Evil Genius, but other than that, it's very much mocap based. We're leaning towards realism. Serious games. It's not a lot of like goofy, cartoony motion. So, how did I know essentially that this is a studio that fits my skill set? And how did I even like get in as a junior? So, my industry starting point, this is a little bit of that, like about me at the start of every presentation. I was 21. I I was finishing a bachelor in game architecture. It was like sub-specialization was visual arts animation. It was at Breda University of Applied Sciences in the Netherlands. And the reason why I say I was finishing it is because I got the junior position in my third year. I still had a year left to go. So I worked parallel to finishing my last year. And Rebellion was cool enough to let me do that and to hire me without my full, degree. And then I just got it as a junior and then transferred from junior position to a full-time like actual animator. But yeah, let's talk about what was my starting point as a junior. So at university, I had the opportunity to get 3 years of motion capture experience. We're going to get into that. I had 1 year of experience using photogrammetry equipment, thanks to the research division at my university. And I had 1 year of experience as the motion capture supervisor at that same university. And now I'm going to show you some really cool GIFs. And it's very flattering. As you can see, that's me. I have a faceware head cam on, and it is, as you can see, tracking uh, my motions. And we also had two suits that are conveniently displayed here side to side. We had Xsense MBN suits, and those are inertia based. They're not camera based. So you might be used to seeing like behind the scenes of motion capture shoots, and you see a bunch of cameras around, and these suits have like little dots on them. Those are a different type of suits. These are inertia based, which means that we are very flexible with them. They have like 17 sensors, I believe, that are just beneath the surface, and then they connect in the back to like the battery. And essentially they look like this. Actually, if you do, you see my mouse? I'm looking at the chat. Yeah. Cool. All right. So if you see what I'm hovering over, like they kind of look like that. But you kind of attach them to Velcro beneath like a zip in the suit. And so you essentially, before a shoot, you need to arrive a little bit early. You have to zip up your actor, you have to calibrate, and then you're all ready to go. And you're not limited to the space of like a studio with a bunch of cameras. You can go anywhere. You can go record on a staircase, which is great. You can go, to a gym space, as you can see. Let me show you an example of that. So the only thing that we were kind of scared of, we were students. So, and these are very expensive suits. We were a little bit spooked that one of our sensors might get damaged as we are like doing some acrobatics there. So we had a bunch of people standing there as like suit protectors, and it's just trying to catch the suit, if in case someone slips or you trips or something, because if one sensor goes out, your entire suit can't calibrate. um, so you can replace them though, like it's not like irreversible. But we functioned, our motion capture team was an extracurricular team, and we handled all of the students' requests for motion capture at the university. And the university was very much like, it was, there were a lot of groups of students making games. And we would publish them on itch.io, we would publish them on Steam, and we would get graded on how well we did. And so there was a lot of student projects going on and needing mocap, right? And the supervisors would essentially organize the shoots for every single shoot request. We would decide how many people need to be present. We would decide, what room we need to book, how much space do we need for something. We would come up with sometimes with dance cards. That's like it's kind of like a way to connect different kinds of motion that you need recorded into almost like a choreography that you have displayed on a piece of paper, PDF, or whatever. And then the actor memorizes that, and you have markings on the floor in which direction this person is going to move, and what order the animations will be performed, and all of that. And this was actually very, very similar to how it actually functions in the game industry. Because now I've had the opportunity to be on actual, AAA shoots, and I felt like I was prepared for it, and it was really lovely. But yeah, we don't use inertia suits. That being said, also what we have on this slide, another very flattering, I'm really like presenting myself beautifully here. No one is forcing me to share this, but this is photogrammetry. So how is this relevant to animators, you may wonder? Well, as you can see in this specific example here, I am doing some very interesting mouth shapes, and I'm trying to record some wrinkles. And these are very relevant when you get into being like a cutscene animator, for instance, and you're doing facial. And if your rig can't handle doing like this kind of motion or this, you're not gonna get a very realistic kind of way of speech with your characters. So it's very beneficial still in the photogrammetry stage to capture all of these like extreme expressions, the ones with the most deformation of the face, and then you can get some really nice facial out of that kind of rigs. So this is just, by the way, I'm gonna get back to this, but this is one of those examples where, let's say, as a hobby, like photogrammetry is not really something that I pursued later on as a career, but it was very interesting to see how it works. The understanding that these mouth shapes and need to be recorded in this way, and that the wrinkles are very important, benefited me later as a animator who got tasks to work on facial animation, because then I knew if the wrinkles weren't showing enough, I would be like, hey, did we get like a good wrinkle scans, for do we have these like mouth shapes, can we push them a little bit? That's the kind of stuff that maybe you wouldn't know about if you just didn't have the opportunity to pursue something like this. So one of the things that I'm trying to encourage with this by showing you all of that is that if you ever get an opportunity to pursue something that you might not see how it's relevant at the moment, but it's actually, any knowledge is really useful, and it will bleed into your work, and it will make you better. Um, just to show you like the full pipeline, this is, I got I got permission to show this. This is my friend Xander. He's in a suit here, and we're shooting during the pandemic, so we have masks on. And this is inside of Motion Builder, how that motion gets exported. Um, and this is the student game that we were recording this for, Osakabe. So just so that to show that we got to experience like the whole pipeline from recording to engine, and the understanding of the pipeline and how to export from one software to another, because of course the software that we recorded with MBN was different from Motion Builder, and then Motion Builder obviously different from this is um, Unreal Engine. All of those skills is something that someone might not think of, but it's really useful to know, because then once you get into the industry, you don't need to learn absolutely everything from scratch. Like, I didn't have to learn Motion Builder, for instance. I didn't have to learn Maya. That's just on the software side. I didn't, have to understand how animations need to be chopped up into pieces for games, and how they slot back together inside of the engine. Also, stuff like the node editor in engine is something that's really useful to like at least see how it works in one engine, because if you understand how to hook up animations in one engine, you are likely to be less scared even to learn proprietary engine like setup for animations, because skills are transferable. And once you have done it once, you've learned an engine once, it's less scary to learn it again. So Rebellion has a proprietary engine, right? But so it's not Unreal. But that being said, because I've had experience with exporting stuff to Unreal, it was way less scary to, learn how to use the engine that we actually use at Rebellion. And what did I start with coming into the industry then? I got put immediately to work on Sniper Elite 5. I have the shirt. And I was a cutscene animator at first. I'm going to show you the kind of work that I did. For instance, spoilers. The game came out like years ago, so I'm hoping that you don't mind that I'm going to show a bit of a spoiler here. You know what? I'm going to turn off sound, and then there's less spoilers. But as you can see, the characters, they're pretty realistic looking. Like they're not stylized characters exactly. They have they have props, they have like dialogue. This is the last cutscene of the game. So yeah, it was a little bit. I clicked it, so now I have to hold my mouse down so that it doesn't pause. But this is an example of a cutscene that I did. Um, I had multiple in the game that I worked on, and you can see from the art style that is very much compatible with motion capture. It's based on motion capture rather than us keyframing everything as you might do with some kind of very cartoony character or a 2D project. So the fact that I had experience with not just mocap like in general, but like Motion Builder as well, who is that is a software that is very much focused on editing motion capture together, really benefited me. And let's go on. Right now I'm working on Atomfall. The game got announced, so I can show you. I cannot show you anything more than what Rebellion has shared because NDA reasons, but I can show you a trailer. I cannot tell you how many times I've playtested this like beginning area. Okay, so I can just move on. All right, so why is there suddenly a chameleon on the screen? First of all, credit to the Smithsonian magazine where I took this picture from. And second of all, the text, I glued on the text being a chameleon isn't easy. What I mean to say is that when you are applying to any studio, Rebellion or otherwise, uh, you kind of have to keep in mind what kind of games they make and whether you've objectively been like preparing for that kind of game in the past work that you've done, or the is your reel suited for that kind of studio. Because if you have a reel that's full of 2D animation and you're applying to a company that heavily utilizes motion capture and you've never tried cleaning up motion capture, then you can be an absolutely amazing 2D animator and you might not get the job just because it's not the kind of animator that they're looking for. And this is what I mean by choosing your subclass, because even if you don't necessarily make that choice for yourself and you say, "Oh, I'm just, an animator and like anything animation I can do," the kinds of choices that you make throughout your lifetime regarding where you're going to work, what kind of professional experiences you're going to get, will make that choice for you essentially. Because I kind of unknowingly specialized already by this, the mocap stuff that I did in my university years. I I did I did that instead of doing something more 2D or something more cartoony or something more film oriented. And I already kind of went into this subspecialization, which made me a better candidate then for Rebellion and for other game studios that do the same kinds of games visually. uh, Another thing that I would like to say is that why did I write being a chameleon isn't easy. So if you try to just apply with the same set of skills and the same set of experiences everywhere, and you're like, oh, I can be a chameleon, I can pretend that for some studio that does keyframing that I am the best keyframer there is, and therefore for another studio that does mocap that I'm the best mocap editor there is, and I'm just gonna adjust and put a little practice a little bit of everything. There's kind of this saying, jack of all trades but master of none. And you can be like, oh, I am going to, it's absolutely, there's no right choice here. You can try everything and know a little bit of everything, but then some studio that is very highly specialized in just keyframing or just mocap is maybe more likely to go with a candidate who is specialized for the kind of games that they make. Then again, like something more indie would probably appreciate a person who's more versatile. We're going to get to the differences between AAA and indie all in its due course. But the point of this slide is essentially to say that being really good at something takes time. And although skill is transferable, um, there's going to be a difference between someone who does keyframing for 5 years and someone who has done animation in general but hasn't keyframed in a long time, or only keyframed like for a couple of animes, right? That's gonna show. So choosing what thing you want to prioritize, choosing what kind of animator you want to be, and at this point we also, because of the state of the industry, I think it's also important to think about what is in demand as well. So all of these are things to take into consideration. So now we're finally at the stage where I've explained kind of why I think it's relevant to be self-aware about what kind of animator you are and what you want to be, and what kind of like experience a studio is going to give you. Um, because now I have further cemented, my expertise as, someone who is really good at cleaning up mocap and working on, semi-realism, realism, because of my years at Rebellion and the fact that I can now say I have professional experience with that. So now we can move on to the section of the presentation that discusses what kind of animation subclasses have I encountered out there in I will be answering question later, yeah. Um, have I encountered in the wild, so to speak. Um, okay, so I've mentioned this already, mocap, keyframe, both. Again, no right answer, whatever interests you more. And it is possible to do both. Rebellion has also done games that are keyframe based. Also, sometimes if you have some kind of fantastical, creature or like one of those robots, for instance, that you saw in the trailer, that is going to require keyframing. So you might find yourself in a situation where you get a nice little like change of pace at the company where you work, and like you're so used to using mocap, and then suddenly someone is like, hey, could you take a shot at keyframing this? Then again, weapons, they also like get keyframed, right? So there's going to be moments of like fresh air, even if you do, specialize for something. um, Alrighty, let's then talk about there's differences also in what kind of section of the game you're working on. I worked on all three of these. So first of all, I was a cinematic animator when I came into the industry. Then later, I worked on game scene. Game scene animations are essentially so, when you walk into an area and there's a lot of NPCs standing around, they won't be T-posing, they'll be doing something. They'll be idling, they'll have some kind of like insert animation to make them more lifelike. All of that is like game scene animations. So I believe I worked on those on the Sniper Elite 5 DLC. So I got a little bit of a taste for that and how to set that up. Then after that, I worked on gameplay. There's a lot, specifically at Rebellion, there's a lot of prop work and gameplay. There's a lot of like weapon animations that I worked for, specifically for Atomfall. Um, all of these are, in demand, I feel. And although for cinematic, there are certain studios that don't do cinematics. That's something to keep in mind. So again, if you're applying somewhere as a cinematic animator, obviously someone like Larian who does like so many cinematics and cutscenes, or Kojima Productions with 7 hours of cutscenes in Death Stranding, then cutscene experience is very relevant, right? But if you're applying for a studio that doesn't have a cutscene department, then it might be more relevant to show that you can work on gameplay, right? Okay, so there's also the difference in the AA, AAA, um, and I haven't really gotten the chance to work indie, but I have friends that from university that ended up going indie, and I can vouch that AAA has pretty high standards when it comes to quality of animations that go into it. That being said, indie has its challenge that very often I feel like you need to be a little bit of a jack of all trades because you have smaller teams. So, unlike in AAA, you're not going to have a dedicated team of maybe technical animators who are ready to jump in and fix your Maya scene and make like rigs for you, like a billion of them, and do skinning and make scripts for you. You might have to be, depending on the size of the team, obviously, someone who is a little bit more well versed in those areas yourself. Whereas in AAA, you can be super specialized. I have known people who were literally just character skinners. Or a friend of mine, I'm at her house currently, also works in the games industry, mentioned that she knows someone who was just a UV guy at her company and so on. So you can really find your niche and just, really lock in there. Um, Okay, And that kind of brings us to the next one, rigging, skinning, scripting, right? So originally, I thought that I would never know this side of the pipeline because I am in AAA. Therefore, that means that I'm specialized now. That therefore we have a team of people who are working constantly to fix our scenes when something goes wrong. The tech anim group, right? In the last year, I got really, really interested in learning this, and I'm now highly recommending to anyone who wants to listen to me to like at least get some fundamental understanding of these skills because you cannot go wrong with this. And you're never going to be in a place where this is useless. If something breaks with your scene, it is invaluable to have the skill to be able to at least, you know, you don't have to be a master of scripting, but you can open the script editor and you can, read the error. At which line does the problem occur? And you, even if you don't know how to fix that, that already helps your tech animator, like your support team. If you send, hey, I'm getting an error at this line, I think it's this and that, that makes sense to me. That already is really helpful, and that is so easy to do. um, so scripting, I'm specifically talking about Python here because Maya, you can script in Mel and in Python. I haven't heard of a lot of people who have like specialized for Mel specifically. I think Python is a lot more, yeah, not just well known, but also you can kind of use it anywhere. So if you learn Python, you're not making a mistake for sure. It's going to pay off sooner or later in your career. You don't have to be an expert at it. It's really easy. The baseline of scripting is essentially just knowing that everything in Maya has its like code sentence that you can replicate inside of the script editor to make something happen without clicking the button. And what that allows you to do is automate repetitive parts of your work. So if you every day do the same thing at work and it takes up a lot of your time to do this, click that, and it's kind of robotic and repetitive at a certain point, you can automate that. You can automate it for your entire team, and that is going to make you invaluable because you're saving yourself and your team members a lot of time. So I started getting recently some of my like first official tasks to do some scripts, and it was really exciting and really cool. Also, rigging and scanning, they are. I know that it looks, from an animator's perspective, it might look a little bit spooky at the first glance, but also keep in mind that animation was probably also very overwhelming when you first took a look at it. And once you have an overview of this entire pipeline, from the point of rigging, scanning, scripting to the final result, you're kind of like a full stack animator in a certain way. And then you also have more of a freedom to look into indie roles as well, because, like I said, smaller teams, so they're going to really value that you know the entire pipeline. All right. And then there's also, you know, um, some stuff that I didn't mention, by the way, is stuff that I mentioned earlier in the presentation. So, like Maya, Motion Builder, engines. Um, there's also people who use Max, right? But Maya is kind of industry standard. Blender, all that stuff. Like, what software do you use? What engines do you use? Are you cool with learning new stuff, learning proprietary engines? All of that is very much relevant, right? And all of that goes into your, the way that I put it, animation subclass, uh, and determines what kind of animator you are. And now we come to the concerns part. And essentially, that might be once I make a choice. You said that if I don't make a choice, the choice will be made for me through like what I've done professionally in my life. So what if I make the wrong choice? What if I chose to, go into mocap, and then after a while I'm like, oh man, these like, super cartoony keyframe stuff, that looks so cute. I'm so sorry that I missed out on that. Or, maybe you really get into scripting and rigging and you're like, I would actually prefer to be a technical animator. And you're thinking, did I lock myself in? Do I have to start from scratch? Do not fret, is my answer. So, so just to show what kind of like wild journey I've had. So now I'm full-time gameplay animator. I get to work flexible hours remotely, which means that I get to spend less time on commuting. I get to stay home and watch tutorials for, the stuff that makes me a better animator or a better, tech animator, instead of commuting, maybe. Then I am doing a part-time animation masters on the weekend. That one focuses on keyframing. So essentially, because I had an interest in, just widening my horizons, and again, there is always a benefit to knowing more. You can never go wrong with learning more. And I'm soon starting a tech animator secondment because I really, really love scripting, turns out. And it is so closely connected to animation that I feel like I'm just, becoming a better animator just by, learning this additional skill set that allows me a better overview of the entire pipeline. So there's a lot of stuff in there. As you can see, I'm curious. That means you get to be, curious too. You get to switch. A secondment means that you're essentially trying out a, different profession for a while. And then you can decide if you can go continue your way into, for instance, technical animation, and stop being just an animator, or you can say, actually, now that I've tried it, I don't like it, let me go back to just being an animator. That's also fine. So it's kind of like an example here to let you guys know that you're not locked in. You can change, and you can always. You don't even have to take a master's. You can just take a course or just assign yourself some assignments that develop your keyframing on the side or your mocap on the side. You can find mocap online for free. There's plenty of raw mocap data that you can just edit down. You don't have to have an access to a suit, even though I highly recommend it. It's really fun, but it's expensive. So thanks, Uni, for giving me a chance to do it for free. Um, so a couple of things that I also want to discuss before I go into questions. You don't have to be talented at everything that interests you. I was super spooked going into scripting because it's Python coding, right? I thought that you had to be super talented at coding to even consider something like that. Like that you had to be an absolute genius the second that you touched it, that it had to be super intuitive to you. It's just practice. It's the only thing that's important is that it interests you, that whatever that you're deciding to pursue interests you. um, Talent is a head start, and it can help you, get that boost at the start, but you're not gonna be able to, build a profession on talent alone without practice anyway. So don't be discouraged if you don't feel talented at something. I know plenty of people who are afraid of the node editor, for instance, in Maya, because they think, okay, I look at it and I'm scared. What are all these? There's so many components to this node. Like, how do I even begin? And the truth is that, like, yeah, sure, it looks very complicated at first glance, but you don't have to know everything. You can know a couple things to start with that are super simple and only use that for years if that's what you want. And already that little itty bitty knowledge is going to differentiate you from someone who's never given it a shot at all and doesn't know. Because node editor, for instance, that is just Maya under the hood. And of course, that knowing how something works under the hood is going to help you problem solve. It's going to help you look into certain connections that aren't obvious at first glance. Um, so yeah, again, I keep saying this, but no knowledge is wasted. Um, Second of all, because of what I wrote on the last slide, where I was like, oh, I'm also doing a master's on the weekends. It's a part-time master's, first of all, and please don't go away from this presentation thinking that you have to work crazy hours to be a successful animator, and that's what I'm preaching. No. First of all, it's absolutely up to you how many hours you work, and how much time you dedicate to self-development. First of all, there's a balance between you cannot fully be lazy and never do anything and accept and think that you are going to have a very like successful career if you are like giving 0%. But also, if you give 120%, you can burn out very easily, and you're again back to zero because you can't do anything, right? So really there is a balance there. And I would also say that if you are at a studio that is forcing you to essentially sleep at your workspace because that game needs to be shipped tomorrow or something, that is not probably the best studio for you. um, because your studio should always put your health first. Because a healthy employee that has the time to also, consume media outside of work and to pursue hobbies is going to be a better employee than one that is super tired and overworked and stressed. You're going to be a better person if you're not overworked and stressed, and that's going to make you a more pleasant coworker. So it's essentially in the company's interest to keep you healthy. And everything that you do outside of work bleeds into your work. So, for instance, back when I was at university, we used to do this class. It was like croquis, essentially. It was a live drawing, but it was a little bit fast, right? We didn't. I mean, there was also live drawing like for hours. That was more like lighting, shading, composition, all of that. This was less focused on composition and more about capturing, the gesture of the pose. That is, even though that's 2D, that knowledge of, getting the pose to look really fluid, um, that transfers. And if you continue drawing 2D as a hobby, that is going to help you as a 3D animator, even if it might not seem that way. But also the thing that I mentioned, oh, if you are painting, flowers, you might think that that's not going to be useful. No, actually, you're learning stuff about composition, for instance. And if you get assigned to a cutscene, that might be relevant to you to know how to place things within like the cutscene in a way that looks appealing to the to the player. um, and the list goes on with hobbies, really. um, Anything that you do, even just like watching shows or playing other games, it might inspire you for your next personal project or your next animation. Like, oh, that looks cool, I want to try something like that, and that leads you to make a really cool project that might catch someone's eye. I've had friends at work tell me that they got their first animation gigs at a company because of some game jam that they did for fun, and the product ended up looking really cool. And then someone who was hiring them went like, "Ah, you have a spark for games. You like making games. That's great. Like, that's what we need." Um, and the last thing that I want to say is that sometimes an interest can stay a hobby, so you don't have to monetize everything. It's really cool to have a good idea of what you want to be, because it's going to give you a very clear like path that you want to take. But it's also cool to just be interested in something just for the sake of, having fun with it. I feel like one of the main reasons why I felt so free to pursue rigging, scripting, skinning, all of that is because as an animator, no one was really forcing me to. I could learn it at my own pace because I wanted to. And immediately that gives you a different approach, a different mindset for it than, oh, I have to learn this for my grades. There's gonna be an exam. It's really like a huge difference mentally, especially if you're, a neurodivergent, if you have ADHD hyperfixations, or something like that. That is like finding the right motivation is like really, really nice to be able to get something done. All right, then. So this concludes the part where I am just chatting to you guys.